Muy buenos días para todas y para todos. I first would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to give this presentation. I just need to correct that this is not experience that I have in looking at these cases around the world, in the tropical world at least, but of a collective experience from colleagues in the three regions. That's not correct. Okay, and I decided also to stick to my notes in order to really be brief on time. So the cases I will refer to in this presentation are inspiring examples of forest management efforts under diverse contexts in tropical and subtropical settings. And from these experiences, the main focus will be, of course, on governance-related outcomes and lessons we can learn from. So after a brief introduction, I will quickly refer to the background of the initiative in search of excellence in sustainable forest management. I will then highlight some findings from the three regions studied, which are Central Africa, Asia and Pacific, and Latin America and the Caribbean. And then I will move to some findings from the three regions, as I said, and present examples illustrating a set of core governance values. In the last part, I will share with you some governance-related lessons and recommendations, but from cases in Latin America and Caribbean. Actually, the next two presentations will focus on Asia and Africa. So very quickly on this, of course, we know that there is no consensus of even any agreement on what is sustainable forest management, what is good forest management. Since people have different expectations and perceptions, methods of evaluation, and even ways of reporting the progress towards sustainability. In other words, the definitions are quite relative and very much depend on the context, the actors, and the conditions in each case. Forest management has to be seen as a process that must be constantly adapted to meet new objectives. In this sense, we can refer to it as a gradual learning experience. And on the other side, we know that SFM is a very elusive goal. We know there are many challenges facing sustainable forest management around the world. In this particular case, in the tropical regions, we can talk about the weakness of institutions. We need to also strive to better governance, implementation of integrated forestry policies, so an agreement among these different sectors, improvement of forest practice, of course, more investment in forestry, more awareness raising, and targeted communication. And this last point is very critical and allows me also to talk about this initiative in search of excellence. And we all know about this situation. It's too much on the same, too very negative e-messages, text messages from the destructive capacity of human beings, in this case, to destroy our habitats for many species. So there is a lot of negative information, news in the news about this, and the question is how to balance these negative reports on tropical forests. So this concern also gave way to identify cases of exemplary forest management in order to examine the core components of high-quality forest management. In this case, FAO, together with a number of countries in three large regions, identify this need in order to promote development of sustainable forest management practices, to strengthen policies and the application of SFM, and show the main challenges and alternatives based on these cases. These three different studies took place in these three regions almost along this past decade, and these are just the main products of these initiatives, and are also available in the website and FAO. As you can see, we are talking about 87 exemplary cases in 39 countries. And these are examples of across a variety of forest types and ecosystems, exemplifying management in large and small forest areas for diverse objectives and under different ownership and arrangements. And I cannot go now into the process of selecting these cases, but important is that this was based on a voluntary nomination from anyone who felt that she has a case in which there are elements of sustainable forest management, so that could be considered as a successful case of SFM. And also important to say that here SFM refer to management of natural production forests, primary, secondary forests, management of protected areas, management of planted forests, forest restoration, and even agroforestry systems. So main findings across these three regions, and very quickly on this. One is, I think this is important because there are a lot of concern about the sustainability, economical sustainability. SFM is achievable and can be a highly competitive land use option in a variety of contexts and management objectives. And there is no one model of receive for SFM, but rather different tools, different practices, which if adapted to a specific situation, scale, and context can help achieve this goal. And also important is the context in which management is occurring, and this is a definite point of excellence along with perspective of the appropriateness of management objectives. And these are more related to some of the core governance values. We found in these cases a lot of progress in managing organizational processes, also in forging innovative partnerships, also in people's participation, empowering local communities, in promoting equity and fairness in decision-making and the distribution of benefits, and the appreciation of indigenous knowledge and traditional systems. I know this is not new for many of you, and this at least confirms what we have been seeing along this past decade, 2 decades. And this is an interesting, let's say, model in which, first of all, is to acknowledge the high diversity in the elements of excellence in forest management, and also the existence of commonalities among these cases in these three regions. And here the figure illustrative illustrates a model that stresses the importance of these different components of excellence and the interrelationships among them. So you can see here components related to commitment, resource security, attention to improving livelihoods for local people and or profitability, sound institutional and management frameworks, attention to silviculture and ecosystem management, and application of sensible management philosophies. So the core of the model is anchored in reaching societal consensus with regards to how forests should be managed and what we want from forestry. So here I put this part of, if you like, of extracting the governance-related factors that relate to all these cases. And one is what is in brackets is let's say the region in which this statement applies mostly. So a favorable institutional legal framework must very clear for many cases in Latin America, well-defined property rights and resource security, reconciliation of customary law and modern law was important in these cases in Central Africa. A suitable organizational structure and strong leadership, maintenance of cultural identity, opportunities for wider management objectives and greater local benefits. So the focus on the people's livelihoods, participatory decision-making, communication, and networking. So these and strategic partnerships. So these are a number of, let's say, key elements that we found around these cases with some focuses on original emphasis among these. So now we go to try to synthesize this in following a framework. And I use this framework of pillars and principles of governance. So 3 components: policy, legal, institutional, and regulatory frameworks, decision-making processes, and the third component on implementation, enforcement, and compliance. And what you see horizontally across these components are values of transparency, accountability, effectiveness, participation, fairness, and efficiency. So for this particular exercise, in the first one, I focus on values related to the efficient organizational structure and effective local regulations. And the second one on participation and conflict management. And the third one on the capability, technical, financial capability to address, in this case, the different tasks related to forest management and partnerships. So I will bring now to you some examples that have established efficient and participatory organizational structures and decision-making processes, good capability, and innovative partnerships, which allow these experiences in these cases to excel in social, economic, and/or environmental aspects of forest management. Actually, there are 6 cases, 2 from each of these tropical continents. The Zulia Reserve Forest in India, which is focused on protection and forest management. The Kangio Mangrove Biosphere Reserve in Vietnam is an example of mangrove rehabilitation, conservation, and recreation. Kilung Ijim Forest Project in Cameroon, community forest management and conservation. Then also in Africa, Losi Gorilla Sanctuary in the Republic of the Congo, on joint wildlife management, forest conservation, and ecotourism. The community of the Ejidos of San Diego de Tesains in Mexico is a management of natural pine forests for timber and recreation. And the Association San Jose de Ocoa in Dominican Republic on the management of forest plantations for timber and watershed protection. So from now on, we just quickly go through these illustrative cases, just with the idea of looking at these approaches, follows, and the tools that in these cases we can identify that relate to some of these governance values. The column at the right, of the far right, just highlights in red the main governance values found in these cases. Well, in this case, excels, if you like. So, for example, in the case of India, which you can see also is a village-based initiative protecting degraded or partially degraded stands. There are some approaches like the conformation of village bodies, forest protection groups, regional committees. Also, the idea of this approach of equal participation in terms of representation, transparency, information, the guiding principles established by them on based on democratic decision-making, clear and flexible rules concerning specific management practices. And then, for example, in tools, the collection quotas for each household, guidelines for collecting, distributing forest products, protecting forests, getting access, for example, voluntary rotational patrolling of the forest area, employment of paid watchers, demarcation of boundaries. So these are some of the tools used for these local actors. Another example, in the mangrove, the largest area of rehabilitated mangrove forest in Vietnam. You can see also you see is effective local regulations and capability, where this case is most can be highlighted. For example, in Africa, in the Kilung Ijing Forest project, you see emphasis on partnerships between communities represented by local user groups, traditional authorities, and the government, providing coordination, conflict resolution, and technical and legislative support. And also they have established village committees. It's interesting to see also the tools, the technical operational unit that provides assistance, supervising procedures for dealing with and punishing minor infringements. So we are talking about local regulations that work, job capacity building, training, have to. This is also very interesting. You may see this in detail when you have, I guess, the presentation will be available for everybody. So here this is very interesting, this initiative, because as you can see, there are a number of approaches and tools that have helped conserve the forest habitat for the gorilla as a main product, if you like, of that for these communities. And also in the case of the Latin American cases, you also have a number of governance of tools and approaches follow to reach this goal of sustainable forest management. This is also a very interesting one in terms of approaches and tools like the convite or invitation. This is a model, or models for payment in the form of a share of profits or land in exchange for water. So very interesting approaches to really try to consolidate the initiative that comes from these local people. So very quickly, really, and more on the lessons and recommendations from the Latin American cases. One is, of course, the community involvement is achieved when they receive a tangible benefit from forest management. This is not new. This is really a very clear statement that we find everywhere. Well-organized communities can develop ingenious approaches for forest management, and there are good examples where they, without external support, they manage to really enter into, let's say, negotiations for payment for environmental services, for example. And leadership, as we know, is a key aspect of community-based organizations. Institutional legal framework is needed for producers to respond to economic incentives. There is some detail on that, but also important for management as a management strength linked to diversification of uses through technological innovation and research. So in these cases, we really find very interesting innovations related to how to deal with forest areas, rehabilitation, using some local adapted technologies and even research, and also in terms of external support and financial support, it has to be timely and coordinated. So for recommendations, we strengthen forest management organization. This is called umbrella organizations that have a very important function of representing these different organizations and allow them, for example, to go to markets in a very more stronger position. Examples in Guatemala, for example. Recognize community-based regulating mechanism that is also underway in some countries in South America at least. Promote training and human resources development. The supply of training is important because everybody wants to be trained, but where are these institutions that really work on training? Encourage diversified and value-added forest production. This is really key. And of course, there are some details to comment on that, but no time. And reduce barriers to sustainable forest management. These are administrative barriers. Sometimes it's, these complicated management plans and etc. that have to be simplified and more, become an incentive and not a disincentive. And this is the end of the beginning because all these efforts trying to, identify and highlight cases where there are people, communities, even the private enterprise associations responding to these challenges, but these lessons have to be taken away for policy processes and capacity building. We need to change behaviors and practices. We need to communicate the multiple benefits of forest management more actively and more target-oriented. And yesterday we heard also a good presentation focused on that. And scale up, because all these are very nice cases, in some cases it's isolated, and we need to scale up this, for example, through training, information exchanges, knowledge management. There are different strategies for that. And for those who are interested, here is the link to access to the 3 books that I mentioned before. In the case of Latin America, we got the FAO received the support for the Junta de Castilla y León that I would like to recognize here. And thank you very much for your attention.
Gracias. Gracias, Cesar.